Matt Walsh actually celebrated Neely's death.
The community's better off without him. You're all safer now because he's gone.
Michael Knowles celebrated Neely's killer.
He should be given an award for valor. He should be given a key to the city.
Let's watch the Daily Wire's obsession with violence.
And is the site most read by teenage boys who use phone belt clips. If you don't know the Daily Wire, it was founded by the aptly named Jeremy Boring and Ben Facts Over Feeling Basic Humanity Shapiro, seen here winning a look-alike contest with Randall from Monsters, Inc. The Daily Wire is mostly known for pushing right-wing ideas to a wide, diverse base of white men.
Diversity absolutely means anti-white.
No one's denying the downsides of global warming, or should be, but there are also some actual upsides.
And I actually think that society would be safer if we discriminated more.
But lately, the Daily Wire's boilerplate talking points have taken a darker turn.
Execute all of the worst people. Just execute them all.
Over the past few months, the Daily Wire hosts have started calling for harsher and harsher punishments for their political opponents.
The conviction is passed down, you're convicted, and then the execution is carried out the next day.
The punishment for this obviously should be a lengthy prison sentence or death, as far as I'm concerned.
So where is all this bloodlust coming from? To understand it, we have to talk about groomers. Not that kind, although it should be illegal. Grooming is the practice of an adult building a relationship with a child just to exploit them sexually. And for the past year, the Daily Wire hosts have been accusing LGBTQ people of doing just that. From railing against family-friendly drag shows.
For the record, every single one of these people that makes that false smear, that hateful smear, that LGBTQ people are groomers and pedophiles and whatnot, are almost always in openly and outwardly defending the practice of child brides. Okay? Ask them what they think about child beauty pageants and child wives, and you will recognize, oh, they are the actual fucking groomers and pedophiles. Classic, actually, it's a phobophilia shit.
They're abusing their children. They're sexually abusing their children by taking them to these events.
Attacking trans-supportive medical professionals.
A child who's put on hormones is being sexually violated, and their abusers are people like the doctor here. She's like a pedophile. That's how she should be treated.
And freaking out about LGBTQ inclusive clothing sections and beer brands.
So do not shop at Target, or else you're gay and you're a pervert.
Now, these arguments may sound like someone who spends too much time complaining to their Target manager, but this groomer panic has a very specific function, and it's called stochastic terrorism. Outlets like the Daily Wire recognize you can't just call for queer people to be arrested or killed. That sounds too radical, and you'd probably get kicked off a platform like YouTube. So instead, you have to add a step. Accusing queer people of being pedophiles, then arguing that pedophiles should be killed or arrested. This is what scholars call stochastic terrorism, the process of associating marginalized groups with vile or disgusting acts in order to incite violence against them. Take this clip from Matt Walsh's show, where he complains about a pride parade float that included people wearing leather harnesses.
In a functioning civilized society, everyone involved in that parade, really a combination of public indecency and child abuse, would be arrested and never let out of prison.
So first he establishes a crime. A pride parade float with people wearing harnesses is child abuse.
But in West Hollywood, where nearly half the population identifies as somewhere on the gay spectrum, this passes for normal.
And then he makes it explicit.
This is what pride is. The whole crux of it is to target children.
In other words, gay people are child abusers. And what do we do to child abusers?
Call me a hardliner, but I think it is not unreasonable to execute child rapists.
It's not just pride parades either. Here's Michael Knowles making the same argument about kid-friendly drag shows.
I don't know.
The real white genocide would be occurring, unironically, if the American position was to execute actual pedophiles, by the way. Okay? White male genocide. The fuck are these assholes talking about? You'd be ripping out half the population of all these red states where there's child brides left and right. Half the Republican Party would be out, decapitated. Half the fucking pastors would be gone. The notion that, these guys actually want to implement the death penalty for child predation is ridiculous. They don't want that. They just want the death penalty for gay people, and the only justification that they can claim for that is by falsely claiming that all gay people are pedophiles. All queer people are pedophiles.
I don't know how you can watch this and not conclude that the performers are pedophiles. They're abusing their children. They're sexually abusing their children by taking them to these events. Everybody said this is being normalized. This is being normalized. And that's true. This is a slippery slope, of course. The conservatives are always right about the slippery slope.
Is there a way we could shut down the Daily Wire, or do we have to wait for them to fuck up? No, there's no fucking up. They're just increasingly making their arguments more violent. The Daily Wire is a massive institution. They're funded by fucking oil barons who recognize, Hasan is correct, they're funded by oil barons who correctly recognize the importance of propaganda, reactionary propaganda specifically. This is what they do.
All of this should be shut down by the heavy hand of the state. All of these people, other than the children, should be arrested.
And here's Candace Owen talking about her plan of action if she just saw a trans person existing in public.
It's not normal for somebody that is supposed to be a grown man to have a fetish about being a little girl. If my little girl was around a man that wanted to play dress up in little girl clothing, I would pull her away from him. I would probably call the police. This is in a sane society, we would say, this is something that we cannot have.
911, I don't know how to be normal. But this isn't just about LGBTQ people. Daily Wire hosts have been using this tactic to call for state violence against a bunch of other groups. Here's Matt Walsh talking about executing people who sell drugs.
We should be discussing much more severe penalties for that.
Why do you think oil barons and these rich people fund anti-trans and anti-immigration talking points? Easy answer. The anti-trans stuff is a really, really good distraction. Every waking moment that you spend on trans people existing that you like lose sleep over is a moment that you're not thinking about why rent is so goddamn expensive. Is a moment where you're not thinking about how much more you should be getting paid for your job. Is a moment where you're not thinking about fucking oil barons basically personally destroying the fucking environment. And as far as immigration goes, there's even a more direct cause and effect. It's basically creating wedge issues at the culture wedge issues in the culture war that the public can fucking hyper focus on, so that they don't talk about the real issues, the real problems, the real reasons as to why material conditions are worsening for them. The Nazis did this too, by the way, against trans people as well, for the record. 1% of the fucking population, 80% of the goddamn commentary. It's a great distraction. And trans people are mostly powerless in general too. And they're hyper marginalized. They're victim to the intersectionality of marginalization. They get hit from like every fucking avenue. Misogyny, and queer phobia. Not even 1% of the population, sorry. 1.7% of the global population is intersex, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like trans people, which is a much smaller percentage as well. You're right. Anyway, every fascist movement has done this. They've singled out marginalized communities and said that they are a demonstration of moral degeneracy. That's number one. For immigration, immigration has to be illegal so that you can have basically slaves, okay? That's it. Capital owners love illegal immigration because if it was legal immigration, then there would be no permanent underclass that you can exploit. Hello, baby. My baby woke up. Hello, baby. Yeah. But to be fair, Hasan, you are rich, so you can think about these stuffs. We are poor and being played like a fiddle. That's why you do is important, because you break down this stuff for us. Smile. I try to do my very best with the privilege that I have. Before I had of my financial circumstances, I was still a straight white individual who is relatively attractive. And I tried to use that position to break through the very common forms of propaganda that like the left is a group of hysterics that are constantly fucking whining about everything, that hate fun.
Daily Wire was founded by Ben Shapiro and Jeremy Boring. In 2015, when Ben Shapiro was working for Breitbart, a far-right news website described as misogynistic, xenophobic, and racist by many academics and journalists, Ben Shapiro and Jeremy managed to get several $1 million in seed funding from billionaire petroleum industry brothers Dan and Faris Wilks. Given this fact, it comes as no surprise that Daily Wire has engaged in climate change denialism. 8 scientists said that a Daily Wire article about Earth not warming was very low in scientific credibility. Daily Wire tried to correct those articles, but they were still described as being misleading. In 2022, Daily Wire signed a podcast with Jordan Peterson, and in 2023, Jordan Peterson also engaged in climate change denial.
The death penalty.
Here's Walsh again on his preferred punishment for so-called false rape accusations.
And I would be in favor of life sentences for those who falsely accuse someone of rape, because to falsely accuse someone of rape is just as bad as being a rapist.
And they all love El Salvador's new mega prison, which is a facility that's basically hell on earth.
We in the United States need to follow the lead of the government of El Salvador.
You would think that America should look at this and applaud it and say, we
But why reward the illegal crossing? Did you not understand that the designation of legal and illegal crossing is simply signatures on a piece of paper? None of these people would be illegally crossing if there was a safe and easily accessible pathway to citizenship. In your mind, and I ask this with all sincerity, in your mind, do you think that these people are like, well, I'm Guatemalan, and honestly, there's obviously a very easy and very simple way to get into the United States of America, but I fucking hate the rules, and that's why I'm gonna fucking cross illegally and make a treacherous journey that could potentially cause serious bodily harm. You think that's what's going on? No, bro, we need a new way for this. Yeah, and I'm explaining the new way for it, which is to create a pathway for citizenship for all that is currently here already, and to greatly ease access to economic opportunities in the United States of America by creating a pathway to work here legally. There's a reason why this conversation only works towards migration coming from the southern border and never towards migration coming from the northern border. It's because it's a much easier way to channel white supremacist rage and direct it towards these people. They're still people. They're still human beings with dreams just like you do, just like you have dreams. Anyone remember Carlos Gregorio Hernandez Vasquez, aka Goyito, 16-year-old Guatemalan who died in CBP custody in 2019? Here's a 2022 ProPublica report from a FOIA request on their internal investigation.
need this.
You're supposed to suffer when you're in prison. There is no such thing as justice if you are not causing suffering to evildoers.
Now, maybe you even agree with Walsh. Maybe you don't care what happens to evildoers who break the law. But that's exactly how stochastic terrorism works, priming you to accept violence against people who disgust you, so you're more willing to accept it for those who don't. Case in point, Jordan Neely.
A Manhattan grand jury has indicted Daniel Penny in the chokehold death of Jordan Neely.
In May, a black unhoused man, Jordan Neely, was killed in the New York City subway by Daniel Penny, a white former Marine.
Penny was seen on a viral video from May 1st, restraining Neely in a chokehold for at least 3 minutes.
Neely hadn't committed a crime, but didn't stop the Daily Wire host from treating him like a criminal.
Someone that has 44 arrests over 10 years is someone to me that does not deserve another chance.
Matt Walsh actually celebrated Neely's death.
The community's better off without him. You're all safer now because he's gone.
Michael Knowles celebrated Neely's killer.
He should be given an award for valor. He should be given a key to the city.
And Candace Owens used Neely's death to attack unhoused people.
The idea that homeless people are just suffering and all they want is some food is complete and utter bull.
Yeah, when you're homeless, you just have different motivations. You don't even need food for survival. You actually like being homeless. And the only reason why you're homeless is to fucking annoy Candace Owens at the subway station, which she, of course, never uses regardless, but fantasizes about being harmed in that circumstance.
9 out of 10 times you are dealing with individuals that are drug-addled maniacs.
Yeah. No. 9 out of 10 times you have no idea that the person working at Walmart is homeless. 9 out of 10 times you have no idea that the person that you're talking to is actually living out of a fucking car. That's the actual majority of homeless people. The 1 out of 10 times, however, is the homeless person that you see that has probably been homeless for many, many years and has suffered great fucking damage to their brain as a consequence of being devoid of shelter, which is one of the most important things you need for survival, if not the most important thing you need for survival. And then, because that is a traumatic experience for you, that causes you to not even realize how much more traumatic it might be for that person to be in that situation, a victim of circumstance. Okay? without food, work, shelter, clothes, access to running water, things of that nature. So then you think, okay, well, everyone is like this. All homeless people are like this. And then you never even think about how that person became homeless to begin with, or how that person became the drug-addled maniac, as she said. What are the conditions that cause that to happen? Why doesn't it happen with the same frequency and the same intensity as it does in other places? Why is it that the worse the housing market gets, the more this crisis seems to escalate? Perhaps it has something to do with the fact that people simply cannot afford rent. For example, people simply cannot afford their homes.
This kind of stochastic terrorism is going increasingly mainstream on the right. The Daily Wire has received significant mainstream attention, including profiles in places like the New York Times. And the Daily Wire recently announced a deal to stream its shows for free on Twitter, with Elon Musk endorsing Walsh's horrifically transphobic film, What is a Woman? Which is a reasonable question to ask if you're on Jeopardy and the question is, Matt Walsh is scaring this kind of person away from parties. Owens and Knowles both spoke at CPAC, the nation's biggest conservative convention.
Transgenderism must be eradicated from public life entirely.
Matt Walsh shared the stage with U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn during a rally against gender-affirming care.
There is a conspiracy to target and indoctrinate our children.
And Marjorie Taylor Greene followed his lead after he directed a hate campaign at Boston Children's Hospital.
Boston Children's Hospital is facing a barrage of threats tonight over a false social media post.
Pride events across the country have been disrupted by fascist street gangs after being singled out by right-wing media. Violence against unhoused people like Jordan Neely has spiked in recent years as well, as has legislation that criminalizes homelessness across the country. And if all this feels unrelated to you, if you don't think this kind of rhetoric can lead to actual violence, consider the case of Dr. George Tiller.
Dr. George Tiller, known as Tiller the Baby Killer, Tiller the Baby Killer. The notorious Tiller the Baby Killer.
Before Bill O'Reilly got fired from Fox News for being the world's biggest creep, he spent months riling up his audience by attacking an abortion provider named George Tiller.
Tiller aborts thousands of babies pretty much for any reason. Tiller the Baby Killer going, hey, I can make more money killing babies now.
O'Reilly never explicitly called for Tiller to be killed. In fact, he said he opposed it.
If I could get my hands on Tiller, well, you know, can't be vigilantes. Can't do that. It's just a figure of speech.
But it didn't matter. After dozens of segments accusing Tiller of harming children, a lunatic walked into Tiller's church and murdered him.
This was a symbolic killing, he said. Who I wanted to kill was every Democrat in the Senate.
Remember what I said? The only other group of individuals I've ever seen in American history that are so fucking violent and so vicious are anti-abortion freaks, like akin to the trans panic that you see. Sometimes they're the same people. Chaya Raichik is doing exactly what Bill O'Reilly did back then. Perhaps if Bill O'Reilly was at least received some form of punishment, some kind of recourse, something, anything. Just like people being like, you're gross, you caused a doctor to get murdered. Perhaps then people would think twice about it. But of course, you know.
And the House?
Now, Daily Wire hosts are using the exact same playbook, using their claims to protect children as an excuse to normalize violence against a group that is already at risk.
The only real recourse here, the only semblance of justice would be prison sentences, very long ones. Now, if it were up to me, we'd go further than that.
But this kind of barbaric display in Kansas diminishes our entire nation. And Governor Sebelius is allowing him to continue the slaughter.
Doctors and surgeons are performing these procedures to mutilate the bodies of our most vulnerable.
One of the few doctors in the United States who performs the Hitlerian procedure known as a partial birth abortion.
We're talking about Nazi scientist evil. We're talking about abortionist evil.
I was in the courtroom. I didn't sit on the jury. But there's got to be a special place in hell for this guy.
If we have this weird rule that we've imposed on ourselves that we can only execute one either murderers or child rapists, I'd probably execute legally the child rapist.
Wonderful stuff. My food is here. Matt Walsh used to sell a little toy for children of him, his gross ass in literal diapers, and his audience used to call themselves, and still do to a certain degree, the baby gang or something. What do they call themselves? Matt Walsh also has said that 16-year-olds are their most fertile. Sweet baby gang is what he called his audience. Matt Walsh has said that 16-year-olds are at their most fertile, is an advocate for child marriage, or at least has defended child marriage. But of course, he doesn't consider that to be weird and gross and perverted. Anyway, the classic conundrum, just how conservatives operate.